Hello, welcome back to Sharks Happen. My name is Hal. I'm your host, going over shark attacks from the 1900s till present, mostly large sharks. And today we're going to go over an attack on a swimmer, an attack on a free diver, spear fisherman, of course, and an attack on somebody that was out doing some diving that might not be an attack, that has a little bit extra to the story that had to make me comb through a few more stories to find out the answers to that. We'll finish out the show with the recent attack that's going to be a return of What Were You Thinking? So stick around, this is going to be a great show. Okay, we'll start off the show over off of Boca de la Leña, and that is Guerrero, Mexico, and the date is May 29th of 2012. Benigno Navarrete is 46 years old, and he and a companion are out and they are doing some free diving spearfishing. The two are diving for a fish, and currently it's 9 o'clock in the morning. They are 15 meters or 50 feet from shore. So they're real close to shore. They're only in 5 meters deep water, so you're talking less than 20 feet of water. And as they're diving down, shortly after they make the dive, a shark comes up and attacks Benigno. It ends up ripping off his left forearm, almost the whole forearm. It's right up near the elbow, where you can see that in the hospital that his arm is left up to just past the elbow. And his friend gets him into shore. They get him in. He survives the attack, but he loses his arm. It said this was about a 3-meter bull shark that got a hold of him, or 10 foot, 10, 11 foot shark. So that's a huge bull shark. That's almost as big as they come. 13 and a half, 14 feet is as big as a bull shark will get. So that's our attack on Benigno. He ends up losing an arm, but again, it sounds like a one bite situation. I don't know what the deal is with these large bulls when they're not attacking people near the beaches. Near the beaches, it seems like they want to drag you off all the time. And a lot of these stories from the spear fishermen, it's just a once and they're out of there. So it sounds like that's the same thing that happened here with Benigno. And that's our story. It's an attack, not an attempt to predate by a 3-meter or 10 to 11 foot bull shark. Okay, now we're going to head over to Reunion Island. We're going to the west coast of Reunion Island to Brisant Beach, and the date on this attack is May 8th of 2013. Stephane Berhamel, he is 36 years old. He and his wife went to Reunion Island, I believe, for their honeymoon. They had just gotten married, it sounds like, and his wife's on the beach. It's about 8:15 in the morning, and he's out in the water, and he wants to go out to deeper water. Not to deeper water, further out to better waves. And as he's contemplating doing this, others are warning him not to go out there. Don't do it. And I don't know how many of these Reunion Islands, people tell them don't go in the water, don't do this, and they do it, and something ends up happening. So sure enough, he goes out. He goes out 50 yards from shore. It's 8:15 in the morning. He's sitting there with his bodyboard, and he's further out than everybody else because he's already been warned not to go all the way out there. And a shark comes up and attacks him and makes 2 runs at him. I don't know which was which. One of them got him in the hand and the other one got him in the leg, and they said his leg was lacerated, just shredded. So it sounds like a bull shark, probably. It sounds like a lot of these attacks over there are bull sharks. Could be a tiger. I mean, you don't hear a lot of great whites over there. It's warmer water, so I don't know that great whites like the water that warm over there. I know that we'll get into the water temperatures down in the Keys lately at the end of the show here, talking about my ulcer chap, but they don't care for that warm water, so I wouldn't think it would be a great white. So I'm thinking that's probably a bull shark got a hold of him. They end up getting him to shore, and they worked on Stephane for 45 minutes to try to revive him, and they failed to do so. So he passes away from these 2 injuries. Now, I can't tell that there was any. They didn't mention like a thigh removal, which you normally get from a bull shark, or flesh removal. They just said it was shredded. So it's possible the shark was not trying to feed, and that's the way I'm going to have to go with this one. So I'm going to put this down as an attack, not an attempt to predate. We don't know what size or what type of shark, and his wife ended up in the hospital in shock over the whole situation also. So another terrible situation, but it's like with, you know, seeing a shark attack, like watching that boy that was flipped upside down. I mean, it's just brutal. You're not seeing the graphic nature of what's going on, and that might even be worse in some cases. So that's the attack on Stephane Berhamel, and we will move on. Okay, now we're going to head to the entrance of Lake Macquarie, and that is in New South Wales, Australia, and the date is February 27th of 1954. Reginald Fabrizius, he is 23 years old, and he is out doing some swimming by himself. He's about 100 to 150 yards from shore, and no telling the depth of water he's doing swimming, and it's just after 5 o'clock, about 5:10 in the afternoon, almost in the evening. So he's out there doing the swimming. Now, there was a witness on the beach that had seen that there was a shark, a pretty large shark, near him, but nobody witnessed this attack. And the attack happened quickly, and before anybody knew it, Fabrizius is swimming back to shore. When he gets about 50 yards from shore, a gentleman on a surf ski scoops him up out of the water and gets him up and in. They look at him, and he has bites, I believe it was his right leg and his right knee, and it was lacerated, and his femur was exposed. So a lot of damage, probably one of those big, like, where it lifts, like, bites down and lifts up. Those are just terrible. And you know, this sounds like it could be a great white that grabbed a hold of him. It could be a lot of sharks. I mean, being at the entrance of that lake, the lake is going to be salty anyway. It's going to be an estuary lake, which means that bull sharks will be in there, and other sharks will probably be at the entrance, fishing, hunting, you know, ambushing anything going in and out of there where they can't see that they're on the outsides of there. It's kind of, you know, like using the depths to do the same thing. They just do it from the side at those type of entrances, which is why river mouths are a very dangerous place to be. When it's a water, you know, a brackish water situation, if it's a freshwater river and, you know, the ocean, that area right there where they meet, that's a dangerous place because sharks may be looking to ambush other fish at that spot. So that's our attack on Fabrizius. He ends up passing away from his wounds. Must have been a very bad bite. Didn't say that it got a hold of an artery, but this doesn't sound like an attempt to predate. It sounds like a single bite. Sounds like a shark was probably out there hunting and grabbed a hold of him. It was muddy, murky water. It was after a rain, so you had sharky water anyway. Very easy to get an accidental bite in that situation. Not mistaken identity. People ask me what the difference between the two is. Mistaken identity is it looks at you and thinks you're something. Like people think that it looks at people in a wetsuit and thinks they're a seal. An accidental bite is the shark thinks that you're something, but it hasn't looked at you. It hasn't really made a determination. It's biting out of what it's feeling, what its other sensories, other than its eyes, are doing. A lot of times, you know, we're going to go over one at the end of the show, so I went over some of those before. That's the attack on Reginald Fabrizius. Attack, not an attempt to predate. Don't know what type of shark or what size, and we'll move on. Okay, now we're going to head over to Guatemala National Park, which is in New South Wales, Australia. The date is February 7th of 1960. John Gillies, he and a friend Harry, they're out doing a spearfishing competition. They just speared what kind of fish was that they speared? Jewfish, 40-pound jewfish, big fish. And they brought that up to the boat, and when they got it up to the boat and up and on the boat, somebody had yelled that there's a shark on their way in. It sounds like it's a 9.5-foot shark, they find out because of where the story goes. So John Gillies has gotten onto the boat, probably to get the fish into the boat, and he hears somebody in the competition yell that a shark is on the way to them. So he gets into the water, he goes overboard the boat and swims out about 30 feet towards the shark, and then he finally sees the shark coming at him. So he says he sat there and waited for the shark to get 6 feet away from him, and he shot the shark in the mouth. Now this is a 9.5-foot gray nurse shark. So, you know, the sand tiger shark. And this shark, he says, struggles with being shot in the face, and it turns and it starts swimming off, and now it's dragging Gillies, and he says he's about 10 feet underwater at the time, wondering when this shark will ever stop so he can go up and get some air. Well, finally the shark takes a break. He gets some air. The boat comes over to him. He says as the boat was going by, he grabbed onto the stern of the boat. Now the shark takes off again, and now the shark is dragging him and the boat. So the shark is dragging them some more. It finally tires out, and his buddy swims over to the shark and shoots it one more time, and then they bring the shark on board, where John Gillies stabs it in the head about a dozen times, he said, and just before the shark had passed away, it took a nip at John Gillies and took a piece of his wetsuit off. So no injury to the thing. Wouldn't be considered an attack. They consider it a provoked attack, at least report on the GSAF, I think it is. They said provoked. I don't consider those kind of things fishing. Those are fishing accidents. When it's on a boat like that, when it's landed, when you're trying to unhook it, all those things are part of fishing. So it's not even an attack. It's a bite when you were fishing for whatever you're fishing for. In this case, they were fishing for that 9.5-foot gray nurse, and it took a snip at them when they were done. Would have never happened. The shark never tried to attack them. You never know if it was going to try to attack them. I think it was interested in the fish that they brought up more than anything, just coming in the area to see. You know, you got to imagine there was blood in the water, there was the vibrations of a struggling fish, and those will always attract the attention of a hungry shark. So that's our non-attack on John Gillies, and we'll move on. Okay, we're going to finish off our unprovoked attacks over off of Fort Walton Beach, and that is in Florida, and the date is May 27th of 1979. Captain Tommy Neel, he is 36 years old, and he was out diving, and he disappeared. Now, he disappeared, I believe it was on a Sunday, but they found the body, I believe the next day, washed ashore, and it had signs that it had a bite to it, at least a bite. It says that there was something sharp or some big fish had bitten it. But there's some strange things going on here to where he had a wound. The main wound is in the back of his head, and his face was so puffed up that it was hard for them to be able to identify him. There was a boat that was riding in the area in which he was diving that is said, in one of the stories I read, said that he heard a bump, like he ran something over. And it's kind of likely that this guy, this diver, Captain Tommy Neel, ended up getting hit by this boat as this boat was going through, didn't know he was there, and he ended up with that wound on his head, and then he just was bitten by a shark on the way in. Because there's no removal of any flesh, they did say that there's cuts that could be a large fish to the leg, I believe it is. But I don't think that's what did him in, and with the story of the boat, it started making me think, well, maybe that boat did hit the guy. And it kind of sounds like that's what ended up happening there. I haven't been able to find anything that absolutely confirms it that way, and some of these have it down as a shark attack. There's no doubt, I think, that a shark had bit the body, but I think that was after he was already gone. Now, another thing that happened, you know, the body washed ashore. Well, then, I believe it was a day after that, they had a heart, lungs, and the stomach, connected stomach tissue, some other connected tissue, all this connected, washed ashore. Now, Tommy Neel didn't have any, you know, openings to his chest or anything, nothing that would take out his organs like that. So now they had to find out what these organs were from, or who these organs were from. So I go through, now I got to go through all these. I went through, I don't know how many stories. So I'm going through all these newspaper clippings from back in 1979 about this thing. And I finally run across one that says that they went ahead and ran the tests on this, and that these organs were from a pig. So the organs were not human. They washed ashore. They happened to wash ashore the same day or the day after Tommy Neel's body washed ashore, but it was pretty much intact. The massive head wound to the back of the head, and then, you know, it sounds like he was bitten in the leg, probably prior, after he was already passed away. So it was an interesting story, one of those that just takes a little turn where, you know, what are these things from? Kind of like when something washes ashore. Like, was it a jawbone that washed ashore that they were able to identify the thing from? But the same thing. All of a sudden you have mystery, what is this from? And it turns out to be from a pig, which surprised me because I didn't think pigs' lungs and heart and that stuff were as close to ours that you wouldn't be able to tell just by looking at it. So that's our story of Captain Tommy Neel. Not an attack. I don't think this is an attack at all. I think this is a boat accident while he was diving. And I think that this one is actually not on the sharks. So we will be done with that, and stick around because we're going to get into a little bit of commentary at the end here. And what were you thinking? Okay, before I get into what were you thinking, I just wanted to say I've gone through my OSHR app recently, and I did hear that there was 100-degree temperatures in the water off of Key West down there, off the Florida Keys. The water is very hot, so it made me pop open my app, and I saw that Sable is back in the Gulf, kind of up closer to the Gulf area, probably avoiding that hotter water south of there. Probably made its way around, because Sable and Scott are two that are always going around the Keys. Every time I go down to the Keys, those two are either going around or on their way back to shoot up north for the winter. It seems like they kind of huddle up there, north of the U.S. for a long time during the winter. Maybe it's their feeding season or whatever they're doing. I don't know what they're doing, but the only one that's pinging over there, anywhere near the Keys is Sable, that's sitting there in the Panhandle, probably waiting to go back around when the water cools off. And then along the East Coast, you have to go all the way up to, I believe it is North Carolina. The Carolinas have, I believe it's Brayton and Ironbound. Ironbound's a pretty big shark, 12.5 footer, but these sharks are way offshore. Might be warmer waters close to shore too, and they're staying deeper, but none of them look like they're very close to shore. Where a lot of times, other than that, they are very close to shore. I also ran across a video, I don't know how recent it is, somebody caught a shark, and it looked like a huge sandbar shark. It looked like as big as a sandbar shark could get, like 9 or 10 feet. So that's probably the biggest sandbar shark I've ever seen. And the witnesses were all standing around watching the fisherman with the shark on the beach. Could have been an older video, but hopefully he just returned it and the shark was okay. Maybe he wanted it for a trophy, who knows. If you wanted that, fine, good on you. So went across that, a couple things there. Went ahead and another thing I was going to watch, I was going to force myself to watch, and I just couldn't do it. Cocaine sharks on on a show that never fails to make me roll my eyes even further. It started with the whole Mythbusters, and it's just gotten worse since then with the Jackass, and now we got cocaine sharks. First of all, sharks aren't interested in cocaine. I don't know what the hell they're thinking. Second of all, the ocean is so big that if that stuff is leaking out of the packages, it isn't going to affect a shark. They are insane. I don't know what they think. So, cocaine sharks, I didn't even watch it. I don't need to watch it. I don't know what their whole premise is on that thing, other than there's a lot of cocaine being brought into this country and ended up being dumped in the waters when they get freaked out or whatever they end up doing. So, what are you doing? Just tell us what the sharks do. Show us the sharks eating. Pull up on a great white feeding fest on a big whale like you did in your first season. That was one of the, other than the moron that got up out of the boat and got on top of the whale as 20 great whites are feeding on the damn thing. That was not smart. So yeah, I didn't end up watching Cocaine Sharks, so I can't help you with that one. So now we'll get into the real quick end of the show, which is going to be this crazy, what were you thinking? And it wasn't a what were you thinking until I watched it. I had heard about it. My wife had told me about it, that she had seen the clip of the guy. We were talking about the Florida man. I didn't even go through and identify him. I just watched a video, and we're going to go over it. That is in the Everglades, so it's still salt water in the Everglades. You can run into any kind of shark in the Everglades if you want. Bull sharks are all in the backcountry, what we call it, and in the Everglades, they'll be all over in that stuff. The backwater is the Panhandle side, the what do you call that? The Gulf side of the Keys, whereas the Atlantic side, we call that the ocean side. So the backwater, yeah. So these guys are out there, and I was stunned because what were you thinking? I watched this guy first. His buddy, you can hear him tell him, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't put my hands in that water. So he takes both his hands and he shuffles them through the water real quick and picks them up. And I'm like, oh, because you're fishing first of all. So they're probably catching fish. I'm assuming he's either just went ahead and put bait on a hook, or maybe dealt with the fish and he wants the crap off his hands, and that's why he's doing this. So in that case, you're fishing, you got, you know, fish you're probably pulling up, you've got the vibrations and all that, and now you take your hands and you run them across the top of the water like a fish might do. And there's sharks in this water, and he doesn't stop there. He waits a good 3 seconds, and then he takes his left hand and he puts it in, and he luckily got away with that. But no, he had to take his right hand and try to get away with that. Well, that shark was not having it. And man, the body of that shark, they said it was a lemon shark. This had to be about as big as a lemon shark could get. That looked like about a 10-foot shark. Just by the gray body, you can see that you can only very lightly see the grayness, but it's just huge. And grabs him and pulls him off there. The most shocking thing of the whole thing is how quick they got him back on that boat. It's like running on water how fast they got him on that boat. So luckily, you know, he had to go in for finger damage. That lemon shark that he antagonized to grab onto him again. Like we went over earlier in the show, this is not an attack. It's not a provoked attack. This is a fishing accident. And this is a fishing accident where instead of getting bit when you're taking the hook off, you're getting bit where you're cleaning your hands. All part of fishing. You know, I'm going to start taking a rag because there isn't sharks where we're fishing now. We're fishing on little lakes. But there's, you know, alligators everywhere. I'll just take and dip that rag in the water and wipe my hands with the rag. A lot safer, but he would have gotten away with it had he just washed his hands the one time and been done. It's risky, but you're doing it for that couple seconds. But the problem is what he's doing there is alerting any shark in the area. That's going to sound, and probably the pressure feeling of a struggling fish at the surface of the water. So now they're coming up to check out what's going on, and you stick your hands back in there twice. Got away with it twice, you know, the first time, and then you stuck it in there, and that's when he got away with it. That's when I thought he'd get it. Was the very second time he put his hand back in there, I thought he'd get it. It would surprise me that it waited till the third time. But, you know, it doesn't surprise me that it happened, knowing that it's the Everglades. The problem with it being the Everglades, there's gators and there's big-ass snakes in there too. It's the worst of all worlds. It's like being in Australia. So that's our show for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you'll be back in a couple days. I might be back tomorrow. I actually filmed a cluster attack episode, a special cluster attack episode, the most famous cluster attack ever. And I just have to put the ending commentary to it and edit it and get it out. But I didn't want to come out with that before I came out with a regular episode because it's been so long since we had a regular episode. We had the special episode the last time over the myths and trends, and now here we're back into normal stuff. So that's our show for today. Hope to see you in a few days. No links in the comments today. I will put the links, the names in the comments to the stores. And until I see you again, remember, if you go into that water, you are much more afraid of those sharks than they are of you.